everyone. Welcome back to America TV. Hi, I'm Fifi. I want to welcome all of our audience and members joining us online tonight. I hope that you are doing well and, of course, staying safe. And for those of you guys who are joining for the first time, I just want to remind you guys that America is the U.S. Embassy's American Center here in Jakarta, and our mission is to provide a space for young Indonesians to learn more about the United States. And we have temporarily moved to a solely digital platform, but don't worry, you can still enjoy us from the comfort of your own home. And for you guys who are joining via Zoom right now, you can leave your questions at the chat box section or just simply say hi to us, to our speakers and other participants. And please don't forget to use this feature wisely. And for those of you guys who are joining with us right now via Ad America website, Twitter, Facebook, Periscope, and Instagram Live, you can simply leave your question and say hi to us at the comment box for each platform. And in this episode, we will discuss about how to write a statement of purpose or personal essay for US universities. And before we begin, let's break the ice with a little game. So I have the question for you guys. The question is, which late night talk show host addresses Harvard's class of 2020 during the graduation ceremony? A. Jimmy Fallon. B. Stephen Colbert. C. Trevor Noah. D. Conan O'Brien. So you guys can answer the question by commenting at our live for each platform of our social media. And stay tuned until the end of the program. We will give live shout out at the end of the event to you guys with the correct answer. Other than that, don't forget to take a selfie and tag at America's Instagram account during the event. All right, without further ado, let me pass it to our lovely Education USA at America advisor, Kak Vina Alatas.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Fifi. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining in. My name is Vina. I'm one of the advisors for Education USA in Ad America. But again, as you may already know, we are currently going digital. But again, we are very excited because we are still able to give you a lot of information about studying in the US. So for Santika and we are basically still doing a lot of advising, giving you a lot of sessions like tonight. But tonight is a bit different. It's not new. This is something that I've been doing since quite a while when we were still in Ad America. But this is the first time that I have this presentation tonight when we are doing digital. So the presentation tonight is a bit long because it's very, very important. But I promise you it will be very informative. So please take notes, and then don't worry, we have the Q&A session at the end. I also want to say hi to everyone who is watching us from different platforms. So we are on Facebook, we are also on Twitter, YouTube, and on Instagram. But if you want to join the crowd, we are now here in Zoom. Feel free to do that as well. But wherever you are, if you have any question, if you want to leave some comments, please do so. We already have our team with us here. We'll make sure that I get all the questions later on. So let's see, what do I have here. I'm very excited for tonight's presentation because we have over 200 people registered for this event, and I actually see here in Zoom that people keep coming in. So I'm just going to give quite some time, probably just like a minute or two before I start the presentation. But then again, if this is your first time, welcome to Ad America TV. If this is not your first time, welcome back. So happy to have you guys here. And yeah, and we already have Santika in the Zoom chat ready for answering any questions that she can answer during my presentation, but then we're also going to have the Q&A later on. All right, so I am just going to start sharing my presentation slides with a short introduction about Education USA. So let's see here. I hope you guys can see this. All right, so this is Education USA. Right, so we are part of the in the US. We have over 400 international student advising centers in more than 170 countries. So we are basically all over the world. So what we do is the advisors, we provide you with information for those of you who wants to study higher education. So higher education is bachelor's, master's, and PhD, S1, S2, and S3. All right, and all of our services is free of charge. I know it sounds too good to be true, but I'm telling you guys, it's true. In Indonesia, of course, not only with EducationUSA at America, but we actually have 8 centers with a total of 10 advisors. So we have 2 in Jakarta at the US Embassy and in at America with Santika and myself. And then we have 2 in Surabaya at the US Consulate General and at Unair. And then we have 1 in Medan, another one in Malang, Makassar, and Banda Aceh. But don't worry if there is no EducationUSA center where you live. Basically, all of us, the 10 advisors in Indonesia, we are covering all Indonesia, basically. So feel free to reach out to the nearest center. But if now, since you are here with us with EducationUSA at America, if you want to continue, the session one-on-one after this event with EducationUSA at America advisors, we are more than happy to help you on that as well. Okay, so our services, we provide you with 5 steps. So we start with research our options, and then we move on to finance your studies. It's equally important. There are a number of funding options available for you guys, and then we move on to completing your application, which the presentation tonight is basically part of that, part of step 3, because now assuming that you guys already know your step 1 and step 2, you figure out, or maybe you already plan on how you want to fund your study, and then now you are in the application process. But even though you are not in the application process yet, but you still just want to learn something about essay writing, sure, why not? And then we have the next step would be apply for your student visa. And then last but not least, the last step would be step 5, which is prepare for your departure. I know with the current situation, probably we're not going to see a lot of incoming students for this coming fall, because a lot of the students have the options to defer to fall 2021. But please stay tuned if you are one of those people, or maybe you know someone who are going to start their study in fall 2020. We might have a video event for you. Okay. And then, so yeah, meet the advisor. So my name is Fina, and then my colleague Santika is around helping me with the questions in the Zoom chat. This is our email if you want to reach out to us directly. We are currently fully digital, so we are only doing an advising via Zoom. But the good news is that we are available every day. So we start from 1 until 9 p.m. So Santika's shift is from 1 until 5. So if you go to Zoom, here I leave the ID number. You will see Santika between 1 until 5, and then from 5 until 9 you will see me. But I'm not available on days when there's an event. So like tonight, there is no one at the Zoom room, right? Because we're doing this session first. But tomorrow also I won't be available because there is an event as well, which I'm going to tell you in a second. But the following day I'll be definitely available. So you don't have to actually make an appointment. But if you want, you can email us. But the advising system that we have here is a first come first serve basis. So as long as there is no one in the Zoom room, you can have a chat. But if there is a session going on, I am going to leave you a message in the Zoom chat to let you know that, hey, I'm currently in the session. Feel free to wait, stuff like that. All right. Here is our email center. For those of you who received our email about the event tonight, you received the email from this one. So if you want to save that and if you want to contact us via email, you can do that through this email. All right. Tomorrow, just want to let you guys know that we're going to have another AMA series. So since we're going digital, we are playing around with some events, some new events, and one of them is AMA, Ask Me Anything. And then we also tried the AMA series with not just the advisors, but we also invite, so for example, we had a Fulbright alumni in the past, and then in July is going to be very exciting because we're going to have a lot of people. We're going to have current students, incoming students. So it will be very fun. But once a month, I want to have AMA with the advisors, with Santika and myself. So this is going to be so much fun because there won't be any presentation slides. So we're just going to have a chat. If you have any questions, anything, like literally anything about studying in the US, that's going to be your time to ask in this event. So it's going to be tomorrow at 7. Tonight it starts at 6:30 because again the presentation is quite long. So yeah. If you want to know our upcoming events, you're more than welcome to check us out at the Education USA official website, educationusa.state.gov, or you can visit at America's website. All right, let's start. Get yourself comfortable. I already have my water with me because I'm going to talk a lot. But tonight is very important. So this is again something that our monthly event, part of our monthly event back in America, and it's always packed of people because more and more people start to realize how challenging, how tricky it is to write statement of purpose or personal essays to U.S. universities. So let me just start with the fact that writing the U.S. admission essay is really that important. You definitely do not want to make this particular requirements as the least priority when you're applying to the U.S. You definitely want to put this on top, right? Each school is going to require a statement of purpose or personal essay, but you don't have to worry if you're going to apply for more than one university because what you want to do is you want to check if any of the prompts, meaning the questions from each school, is overlap because most often they will, meaning that the words that they're using might be different, but if you're confused, you can definitely come to us and then I'll share with you if they are practically asking the same thing. But oftentimes it is the case. It is the case where the wording, the way they ask the questions might be different the first time you're reading it, but if you compare it and you read it again and again and you compare it with other universities, pretty much they are asking the same thing. So in that case, you don't have to write 2, 3, 4 different essays, but you can actually have one great essay that you can use for many universities. So let's clear things up. Are these the same essays? Because sometimes we get confused. Some universities use different terms. Sometimes they call it personal essay, personal statement, statement of purpose, motivation statement, or motivation letter. Are they the same? So let's take a look at that. So statement of purpose, it's very common for graduate study. If you want to study bachelor's degree or S1, they don't call it statement of purpose. Sometimes they just call it just an essay or personal statement. But SOP or statement of purpose is something that is very familiar, is very common for graduate studies. And what is it? It's, well, just like what it's called, it's about you making a statement of your purpose, right? Sounds simple. So basically, the purpose of you applying to graduate school and your goals. Sometimes the graduate studies, the graduate schools also ask you to write a personal statement. So it can be both. They're asking SOP and personal statement or personal essay, or maybe they are just asking personal statement, but then that personal statement is actually an SOP. I know it can be kind of confusing, but as long as they have their questions, that should be clear enough. But again, if you're confused, you are more than welcome to copy paste or screenshot the question and then give it to us, and then we'll clarify that to you. So a personal statement is pretty much similar on like what it's called. It's about you making a statement about your personal story, right? So you see the difference here. SOP is more about you're talking about your purpose. Personal statement is about you making about your story. Motivation letter is a different term that in the US they don't really call it motivation letter. But the reason why I put this here is because I actually heard a lot of you guys mention that. Hey Fina, do you mind checking my motivation letter? And when you use that term, I know that you're not just applying to the US, and that's okay. I'm just telling, but I'm just saying that motivation letter is not a term for the U.S. universities because it's a term usually for European countries. And I want to clarify this because what we're going to have tonight, you will realize how different the type of essays that the U.S. is asking versus other countries outside the U.S. So, what makes the U.S. admission essay important and different? What makes it so important that I would give this presentation every month in Ad America and I would talk for a good 1 hour and 15, 20 minutes straight. So let's see. Because writing the US admission essay can be, first of all, it can be challenging because it's not as simple as a lot of us think. A lot of us think when it comes to writing an essay to not the US university only, but to any universities in the world, it's about you showing off what you're capable of, right? So it's mostly about your autobiography. You want to show off to them, which is like show off in a good way, telling them your academic performance, where did where you currently work, and kind of things that you've done in the past and stuff like that. But that's not the case when it comes to US essay, right? It's not about writing autobiography, but you're writing a story of what sets you apart from the other applicants and very clearly states your goal. So instead of talking about your past, it's about you're talking about what you want to do in the future. The U.S. admission essay is viewed, the U.S. admission committee, the U.S. admission essay is viewed as something personal by the admission committee. And because they really, really read it. What do I mean by they view it as something personal? It means that they really want to get to know you. But then you start thinking, okay, get to know me. Yeah, I'm going to talk about my past life, right? Like I graduated with a cum laude. No, that's not what they're really looking for. Because if you can guess, why do you think they don't need to see that in the essay? The answer is because they already know that. They can find that out from your resume. They can find that out from the transcript that you submit. They don't want to read something that they can find out on different documents, right? The admissions committee wants to get to know you beyond the professional and academic achievement listed in your resume or CV and transcript. They don't want to know any of that anymore being mentioned in the essay. And for them to get to know you, what you want to do, the purpose of why you're applying to that specific program is the only document is the essay, apart from transcript or GRE, GMAT, or whatever standardized scores that you're submitting to them, right? Essay is the only document where you can tell them this story, what you want to do in the future. Think about it. Where else you can actually mention that? You can't mention that on your resume, right? Your resume stops to now, right? Like what you're doing now. But you can't tell a story about what you want to do in the future. That is what the admissions committee is looking for, and that's what we want to write in your statement of purpose. So it is all about fit because most applicants, most of you guys might already have good grades and scores. And this is what makes the US essays really, really different than other countries, because the way I look at it, if you want to study in Europe or elsewhere except the US, we are thinking that as long as we have good GPA, we are pretty much good to go, right? So that's why the essay is practically just about your autobiography out of your resume. So resume is, just like bullet points, but then you kind of like make a narrative out of that resume into your essay. And that's what a lot of us do when it comes to writing an essay for the US as well. And now I want to clarify that. I'm saving your time so that now you know that's exactly not what you're going to write in the essay, right? a good essay, a good story will make a huge difference on top of that good grades and scores. Because in the US, the way they review their applicants is not just about good grades and scores. In fact, there are actually a lot of people that got rejected despite the fact that they graduated with 3.9, 4.0, right? So the US is not all just about that. Other countries, yeah, I see that. I see that completely. You got 3.9, 4.0, they love that. And then you write something out of your resume in your essay, it's fine for them. They don't really need to know about what you want to do in the future, but not the US. The US is completely different. And this is what I love about the US, and this is what I like my job, right? Because I found that really unique, just very different. So in the US, the way they review the applicants is very holistic. So that's why essay is very, very, very different, very, very important. So now let's talk about the essay itself. There are different type of essays. Again, statement of purpose is the most common one. Usually, they are asking you to submit 1 to 2 pages of essay, not double spaced, and that will give you about 500 to 1,000 words of an essay about yourself. Okay, now you maybe you start thinking, wait, I thought you're saying not to talk about yourself. You'll understand what I'm saying in my next few slides. But then you're going to talk about professional goals as well, and why the specific program, and why the specific university. So that's the statement of purpose, right? But then there are also some universities that they don't ask you for statement of purpose, but then they have a set of questions. Usually, well, I mean, it depends, but sometimes it's 1 to 3 questions, and then each question's usually no more than 250, sometimes only 100 words, or maybe they let you write for 500 words. We call them a more focused question. And then we also have another universities that will going to ask you unique questions. This is not common, but this can be common for those of you who want to study MBA. However, what we're going to cover tonight is the most common one, which I believe this is something that you see a lot in your application process. We're going to talk about statement of purpose / personal statement, because those two can be similar or not, but it can be confusing. But let's stick with statement of purpose or personal statement. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. All right. Before you start writing, you definitely need to know your audience first, because I've read a lot of essays, and oftentimes when I'm on the reading essay mode, I will kind of like switch myself to be someone as if I don't know anything about Indonesia. Like I'm just as, someone who doesn't know Indonesia at all, right? And then oftentimes why I have this slide up is because I learned that a lot of us tend to write something that you just assume that the reader will know what you're talking about, but oftentimes it's not going to be the case, right? So you need to know your audience first. Who's going to read this? Who will read your essay? It's actually the members of the admissions committee, who are typically faculty members teaching in your respective program. So what does that tell you? That means you definitely need to show an expertise in what you want to study. But then, because on my next few slides, I'm going to tell you that because we're going to also talk a little bit about Indonesia, the readers might not know about it, right? So now you know that it will be someone who is not Indonesian for sure. It's going to be an American, and it's not just like someone whose job is to read an essay. That's it. But they're actually the expert as well. The admissions committee is, it can be the professor even. Okay. And what are they looking for exactly? Right? They're looking at story, but then yes, some people when they heard about story, they thought it's a story. Good, it's a story about myself, right? It's actually not. So it's yes and no, but I say no because the big chunk of the essay is not just about yourself. So technically, it's a mental picture of who you are as a person as it relates to your fit for undergraduate, graduate, or professional school for your future profession. And before I move on too long, I just want to let you guys know this is supposed to be a secret, but I'm just going to tell you because it's not going to be a secret anymore. But I'm pretty sure this you should know. The admissions committee may read only part of the essay. And what does that tell you? So that means there's a chance that they might not read those beautiful 1,000 words that you have, right? The reasons is because they have a lot of applicants, right? So they have deadline to do that. They have deadline to meet, and so when they're sitting down in a day, they have to, okay, I'm going to, review 50 applicants today, and so they need to do it really quickly. When and on everything, like looking at your transcript, looking at your resume, looking at your essay too. So if when they read the essay, they feel like this is not interesting and I don't really have time to just keep going on reading the rest, they might actually skip it. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to accept you, but that might happen. So now, as an advisor who loves reviewing essay, we're not going to do that. We don't want that, right? And one of the reasons why I have this event every month is because our goal now, especially if you're going to use EducationUSA service, is that we're going to make the reader, the admissions committee, to keep reading the essay from the beginning to end. We don't want them to skip your essay. And how are you going to do that? One thing first is you're going to have to make one of a kind introduction paragraph. It's all about the importance of the introduction paragraph. So it's pretty similar, like if you're picking up a book, right, in a bookstore, or like, I usually just like scroll down to like, Amazon Kindle, and then I would just like pick a book, and then I would read the first few paragraphs. If I don't really like the first few paragraphs, I'm not gonna read it, right? But then if it's really engaging in a way, I'm going to keep reading. So think when you start writing the essay, think of that as if you're reading a book. I know it's hard. Not all of us is a writer, but at least that's the expectation that we want the reader, the admissions committee, to have when they pick your essay. You have to make an introduction one of a kind introduction paragraph, and write an essay that no other applicant can write. So let that sink in first. I'm going to stay a little bit longer in this slide. Write an essay that no other applicant can write, including your best friend who is probably applying for the same program. That best friend will be your competitor, right? You don't want to have the same essay. You want to write an essay that literally nobody, not even one person, can write. But then at the same time, we don't want you to try too hard to be different, because you have now in mind that I have to write something that no other people can write. But just as long as you're being genuine and you're being original and you actually know what you want to do, it's good, right? And then now you probably start freaking out, like, oh my goodness, I don't know how to do that. And then sometimes people start thinking, okay, I need to see samples, right? Can I see samples of essays? I got this a lot. Fina, can I see can I see essays from your advisees who is now in university of something, those, highly selective university? Can I do that? Well, first of all, I cannot do that. But sometimes even the advisee allows me to share that essay. And in that case, can I do that? Yeah, if I got their permission. But the question is, do I want to do that? And the answer is actually no. I did that in the past. So I always, me as an advisor is always about learning by doing. So I learn a lot being an advisor with EducationUSA. So I did that in the past, where I asked the permission from the advisee who already got accepted. And then I shared it with my new advisee. And then what happened was either they kind of like start copying, not exactly the same, but pretty much the same. And we don't want that at all. It's plagiarism, the way I look at it. Or they are in so much pressure because the essay that I shared with them is so good that they don't think they will be able to write as good as that. So my answer is, when he's asked me that, no, and it's because it's not necessary. And don't worry, I say no, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to let you guys struggle with writing this essay, because that's what we are here for. This is what Education USA at America advisors are here for. We're going to work on this together, right? So you don't have to compare, and don't compare. I mean, sometimes people come to me and then, Fina, before we talk about the essay, I want to show you my friend's essay, and then I said, no, I don't want to read it. I don't need to read it. Why would I want to read it? I want to read your story. I want to hear your story, right? So don't compare, because it will make your essay original. And then remember also that when you're writing an essay, you are not writing an academic paper, because this is a new slide that I put up here, because I also see that that is being the case, where a lot of us talking, the tone of the essay is too academic, and it's not really interesting, because here we want to write a story, right? First thing first. So what can you do now that you kind of like, okay, I need to make one of a kind introduction paragraph. How can I do that? If you're still kind of confused with like where to start, the first thing that I found really helpful is to create a topic or a theme of what you're going to talk in the essay. So before you just start typing the essay, you definitely want to make a doodle, brainstorming, make a lot of bubbles, make a lot of bullet points, mention stuff that you want to talk about, right? Create a topic means, what is it exactly that you want to do? So usually when you come to me for the first time as a new advisee, the first few questions that I usually ask you is, what do you want to study? And then why do you want to study that? I don't even ask you where you want to study. Not that I don't care where you want to study, but that's not really important, right? But I want to know your story first. Like, oh, I want to study environmental management. Oh, great. What's up? What's up with that major? Why do you want to do that? Right? So I'm going to ask a lot of these questions where people might find it really weird that I'm asking this question, but you'll thank me later, because what the more answers you have, the more like if you have like a really good answer on why you want to study environmental management or whatever program that you want to take, that's something that we can actually put in the essay. All right. Another thing that if you don't know, okay, I don't really know yet the topic on top of my head right now. Another tips that you can actually ask yourself is this big questions. Who am I trying to help? If it's not a who, meaning that you're not trying to help the citizens of Indonesia, for example, or the citizen of where you're from, that's fine. It doesn't have to be people. But what am I trying to help? Oh, I'm trying to help this particular industry. Maybe I don't know, like engineering, chemical engineering. I don't know, or maybe like that. The other person who wants to study environmental management. Oh, I want to study, or maybe like public policy. But on what? Public policy is very big, right? Like on specific on what are you trying to fix? Maybe poverty, whatever that is, right? What is it that you want to do? What am I trying to help? I'm trying to help the economy of Indonesia. Okay, be specific in exactly what way, right? So another question is technically like, what is your mission here, right? Now, this is going to be very tricky if you want to study MBA. So if there are some of you who are watching this want to study MBA, let me know. If you're in Zoom, let me know in the Zoom chat, because I'll be happy to share with you why writing an essay for an MBA program might be quite tricky. But now let's assume that we have so many other programs out there that I don't want to focus only on MBA program. But so yeah, so these are basically the one that you want to ask yourself. That will be your topic, meaning that that's going to be what you're going to write in the essay from the first paragraph until the end. You don't want to talk anything else. That's why come up with a topic is really important, right? So the larger the scale of the problem, or it doesn't always have to be a problem, it can also be an idea. I have some advices that, so currently Indonesia is already good in this section, but I see that there is another way to improve that. So no problem, right? So, but you have an idea, you have some innovation. So it doesn't have to always be a problem. So the larger the scale of that problem or idea that you would like to focus on in the future, the better. Larger mean if you're talking about Indonesia in general, maybe not as big as Asia, although I definitely have an advisee who already now got accepted, and he's currently working at the ASEAN, and then he actually wants to continue working for the ASEAN, and then so he's going to focus not just Indonesia but other ASEAN countries. That's totally fine. But just in case you're not planning on doing that, let's talk about like how big is the scale that you want to do in the future, and the larger it is, the better. Now, there are two ways of writing a memorable introduction paragraph. By now, you understand that the introduction paragraph is very, very important, and then that you need to write a one-of-a-kind introduction paragraph. And then now you know how you can do that by creating a theme first and answering some of the questions like, who am I trying to help? What am I trying to help? What is my mission here? And now into the writing itself, there are two ways that you can do. The first one is the personal approach. And so this is, like in the beginning, I mentioned about, we're not talking about you. We're not talking about your story. We're not talking about your past story. But in this one particular paragraph, you are allowed to do that. Only if that's something that makes you stand out and sets you apart from the other applicants. Oftentimes, we don't have that kind of unique, different personal story. Sometimes people just think, nothing special about myself, but I know I have this vision. There is nothing about my upbringing that makes me want to do what I want to do in the future. Sometimes I do have some people like that. So, for example, the reason why this particular advisee want to fix the climate change of Indonesia is because probably he or she grew up with parents who already work in this kind of industry, in this field, so that this person's already know a lot about it, and this person loves to make a change. And in that case, we can definitely mention that, right? So if you have unusual experience, or maybe you are a member of underrepresented population, this is something that I like to urge my fellow advisee, my fellow Indonesians who are coming from outside Java to have and to use this kind of approach. So, for example, I have a number of advisees coming from the Eastern Indonesia, right? I always found it really interesting. Their stories is just amazing to begin with. So, for example, on top of my head, I have one advisee who she wants to learn so much about, I think, computer science, if I'm not mistaken. And then I thought she wants to fix something about the field of computer science in Indonesia. But then she said, no, I want to be a teacher because where I'm from, which I forgot where, there is only like one or two faculty members teaching that class. And then I found that, unacceptable. Like, we need to have more of the locals do this. And she said that the person who teach that specific program is, all of them come from Jawa. Not that they don't accept that, but then for this person's intention is to have more of the local people from like where she's from to actually can also be a teacher. And she wants to be the first one. Isn't that amazing? And then I said, yeah, we definitely want to have that in the essay. But if you are, let's say, I don't know, you're just a happy kid, nothing, nothing unusual about yourself. Don't worry, you don't have to try so hard to create a personal story, because there's another way that we can actually do. Oh, before that, I want to give you an example first of what a personal approach type of introduction paragraph looks like. So you can read this. The passing of my mother and grandmother from breast cancer when I was 15 years old opened my eyes to a new perspective on life. I became intensely interested in scientific research with aspirations to better understand and possibly find a cure for cancer. This is such a strong opening, very personal, both to the applicant and can be very personal to the reader as well. I mean, when I'm reading this, I definitely want to read more, because it's really amazing that this person really um, experience it, having her or her mom and grandmother from breast cancer, and then now this person wants to make a change, like learn about it, right? So this is an example of a personal approach type of essay. Now the second one is the second way is to write, diving into the problem or issue or idea that you would like to tackle, that you would like to fix, that you would like to solve. And this is an approach that a lot of us here in Indonesia do that a lot, because a lot of my advisees live in the Jabodetabek area. If this is not your first time, you realize that for the sometimes during the events, during the digital events, I would pull up some polling, right, to basically to know where you guys are watching this from, and the majority of you guys are coming from the Jabodetabek area, and so sometimes we don't really have, not all of us have that type of personal story, and so they are just diving into the problem, and that's totally works as well, right? And I have like a couple of samples here, just the introduction. um, Again, because the introduction paragraph, we have to make it just one of a kind and very, very important. We want to grab their attention, we want to grab the reader's attention, and I feel like us as an Indonesians have a lot to tell, because our country is just so unique in so many ways. And so I always urge people to give a glimpse of Indonesia. If there is some kind of the ironic, so for example, like this one, right? Indonesia is an emerging economic country. It's predicted to be one of the top 5 largest economies in the world by 2050, which is not that long, right? Again, Indonesia also shows success in cutting the poverty. See how the students start with something, oh my God, look at how great Indonesia is. And then this person just like dropped the bomb. However, the World Bank claims that socioeconomic inequality in Indonesia is widening despite all this beautiful thing about Indonesia that we're going to that this PwC report predicted in by 2050, right? That basically the economic growth so far has only been enjoyed by the richest 20% of the society. Again, when I read this as someone who is not Indonesian, do I find it interesting and I want to read it more? Absolutely. Because, oh my God, Indonesia is so great. But what? Seriously? The socioeconomic inequality in Indonesia is widening. So this is an example of what you can do in the essay. And then if you see this essay, right, you can kind of like get what the person is going to talk about. This person already know what the topic. The topic is basically about the socioeconomic inequality. I mean, I don't remember the rest of this essay, but I can definitely tell that this is about socioeconomic inequality. Another one is as one of Indonesia's founding fathers, Muhammad Hatta, had once said, Indonesia will not shine because of the torch in Jakarta, but Indonesia will glow because of the candles in the village. Let's stop there, because this is a quotation, right? A lot of people do this a lot too, take some quotation, but the quotation that we've heard before, the very common quotation, those, I don't know, beautiful yet cliche type of quotation. I don't know on top of my head the example of that. And when I see that, I will give them like a cross. No, we don't want that. We don't want that kind of quotation. But this kind of quotation, definitely, because this is something that this is the. I mean, when I read this is the first time I read it, and I remember that's why I put this here because when I the first time I read this, it gives me a smile. I love it. I just love this as an Indonesian, of course, right? Like it's just so beautiful. Indonesia will not shine because of the church in Jakarta, capital city. But Indonesia will glow because of the candles in the village. Just beautiful. Indonesia's food security relies on small farmers, which accounts for 90% of all Indonesian farmers. And unlike US farmers who are virtually below. So I mean I can already also tell, I mean I remember what the person is writing in this essay. But from this just couple of sentences, I know that this person is definitely going to talk about agriculture, right? So you have to have this kind of clear story in the introduction paragraph. So once they read it, they know what you're going to talk about, and then they actually want to read more. Okay, another one here. It has been almost 2 years since the president of the Republic of Indonesia is getting serious because this person is mentioning president. So we can already tell that this person is actually going to talk about it's a larger scale, talk about Indonesia. Uh, the Republic of Indonesia officially launched Making Indonesia 4.0. Again, Indonesia 4.0. Throw this word a lot on your essay, regardless whatever that your program is, because I actually see a lot of this in my advisee's essay. To be completely honest with you, because I don't really read news, and I actually learn a lot about Indonesia from reading your essay. That's why I love reading essays. I don't know a lot about Indonesia 4.0, but I see that a lot of advisees from different majors keep using this. So mention it. I think it's kind of like a thing for Indonesia right now. Again, here a roadmap planned by the government to reach the goal of being in the top 10 world's most economically developed countries by 2030. Do you see this here? Pretty similar to the first one that I showed you, right? The person make show something great about, oh look, Indonesia is having this grand plan, and then the person dropped the bomb. Like, unfortunately, there is still a deficiency of data specialists in Indonesia. So this is definitely what the person is going to talk about. The fact that there is um, what do you call it? Yeah, a deficiency in in the specials, and I'm pretty sure this person is going to talk about on why that is the case, right? I think that would, yeah, I think that's the samples. So I hope that by me showing this, you kind of like get a better idea on how to start writing the one of a kind introduction paragraph. But you also need to be very careful when you read when you write it, because again, assume the reader knows nothing about the topic you write about, but at the same time they are also the expert on that specific field. But when I say knows nothing about the topic, I mean by when you're talking about when you're giving a glimpse about Indonesia, for example. Let's assume that they don't know anything about Indonesia, right? So if you want to give a glimpse about Indonesia, um, you could also want to tell them the how urgent, how serious, how great the situation. So the first paragraph is pretty much about giving them a teaser, if you know what I mean. So we don't want to also sound too detailed in the introduction paragraph, but just a teaser, like what I just showed you, right? And you also want to be very specific. It's not just, you don't want to just say, I want to help the economy of Indonesia. But I mean, there are so many ways you can help the economy of Indonesia. What I want to know is exactly why and how exactly would you have the economy. I want to know why. The readers want to know why. Why it has to be you who wants to fix the economy of Indonesia, right? And that's why I mentioned in the beginning that essays is really important, because this is like a really good way for you to start making yourself as one of a kind, right? Because look, I want to do this, and it has, and I will be the first. So let's see here. You can also do a comparison between Indonesia's case or situation with other countries. It can be neighbor countries, or even the United States, right? So what do I mean by this? So let's see. There are actually a lot of my advices to do this. Let me see if I remember one. I think yeah. So one particular advisee wants to kind of like fix how we how Indonesia, like we have the Asian Games, and she believes that we can actually do so much better than that. And you know how like other countries, or like maybe if there's some kind of like competition, they always pick countries like Singapore or like Japan, or maybe if you want to do like some kind of like concert, you don't really see a lot of that happening in Indonesia. They don't pick Indonesia, but they pick Singapore, always Singapore, like Japan or Hong Kong, never Indonesia, right? And so this person feels like, why that is the case? So she wants to fix something, right? And so she mentioned that in the essay. She compares to Singapore, and she even makes comparison to Super Bowl in the U.S. She believes that, well, maybe not as big as Super Bowl, but she believes that Indonesia can go that far in making that kind of big events or what have you, right? So at this point, remember the goal is to wow the reader, to make them keep reading, because I already tell you the secret that is no longer a secret, that the admissions committee might skip many essays. So for example, right, and this is another reasons why I believe that, one of the reasons why I love reading essays, and us as an Indonesians, because again, Indonesia is not a country where a lot of us actually apply to the US, although that's kind of like my goal as an advisor. But we are quite fortunate in this specific field in essay writing, because we are not coming from countries that have a lot of numbers in the US already, like China, India, Saudi, South Korea. Um, so, to the point where if I'm the admissions committee, right, and then I would sit down and then I would read, I don't know, like 300 applicants from China, for example. And then can you imagine if I would read pretty much like a similar story over and over and over and over again? But with Indonesia, US universities love diversity, right? That's for sure. It's one thing that they really look forward to. So the fact that you guys are from Indonesia and you're applying to their campus, I'm pretty sure for them it would be something very exciting for them. To like, oh, okay, wow, from Indonesia, I would like to hear about what the story is about. So we already have an amazing story to begin with. So, but then again, writing it itself, it's hard. But now that you're understanding exactly what they're looking for, and the fact that it's not an everyday thing for them to read a story from Indonesia, it's already a good thing. You already have a selling point on that part. So now we just have to go a bit further. We need to wow them. We need to provide a really good, interesting story. And so it makes the last sentence of your first paragraph very important. Let's sink that in first, more, right? The last sentence of your first paragraph very important, because that's pretty much the point where after the first paragraph, if the first paragraph is not that interesting, it's kind of like their point to, okay, do I want to read it? Do I want to keep reading the whole story, or do I not want to just skip it and then move on to the next applicant, right? And if you have that one last sentence to end the paragraph with a really amazing teaser to make them keep reading, then you're doing a great job on the essay. So keep in mind when writing the essay, this I'm going to read this, but this are basically something that I already covered. But Again, you do not want to write a narrative story out of your CV. By now, you know that, right? You don't want anything out of your CV unless that's something that you're going to keep doing in the future. So, for example, you graduated with your bachelor's degree with a thesis in a specific topic, and that basically what makes you want to continue master's degree from the research that you've done in your thesis. So that means is when you're back to Indonesia, you're going to continue working on whatever topic that you have or whatever research that you have on your thesis, right? So in that case, yes, it's okay for you to mention about your CV, mention that from your CV. But then again, you don't need to mention about your GPA. You don't need to mention about where you work because they can see that already in your resume or CV. You want to create a theme or topic of what is it that you want to talk about in your essay. And the theme or the topic is basically what you want to do in the future. And something that I just mentioned, there's already a selling point in the fact that we are from Indonesia. Without you knowing, without you realizing now, because you haven't started writing one, or you're just start, you're just about to start to get a better understanding about what this essay is about. Maybe at this point you're still not sure. What about Indonesia that I want to talk about? Don't worry. That's why we're going to have the one-on-one advising session, right? Because then that's when we're going to have a lot of discussion. But then for sure, there's already a selling point in the fact that we're from Indonesia. You want to create a story. You don't want to write an academic paper. You don't want to write a newspaper even. This is something that I started to see often now, where you got what I'm saying when I mentioned about, talk a little bit about Indonesia, but in a fun way, in a fun fact way, not like as if I'm reading an article from, I don't know, the New York Times or whatever, or the Jakarta Post or something. We want to write a story. All paragraphs have to be connected. So once you have the theme, once you have the topic, that's going to be what you're going to talk about for the essay. You don't want to write something too general, like the point of me applying is because I want to fix the economy. And you have to be an expert in that topic. And this is what I mentioned earlier. Before we move on to the essay session, I like to have a discussion with you first. I like to get a better understanding about yourself. Like, why do you want to study this specific program? What is going on in Indonesia? Where is the government in this? Are they doing anything about it? Or are you going to work with the government in this specific field? So you have to be an expert in that topic. You can't just say, I get this sometimes, like when I ask, why are you applying for master's degree? And then they don't really have the answer. That's going to be a problem. All right. It's not going to be a problem if you want to apply to outside the US, because you know by now why, right? Because in their essay, you don't basically need to know what you want to do in the future. So if you just want to study if you just want to study masters just because, without actually really know what you want to do, what you want to use that degree for, then that's totally fine. But you can't use that for the US for sure. No, right? So you have to be an expert in that topic. You have to be very clear knowing what you want to do. You need to demonstrate a passion for the chosen topics. Again, when we're doing an advising session, before we move on to the essay review, I would like to kind of like get to know you better, but then I can also see how passionate you are in this specific field, and that is oftentimes that is the case. And again, that's why I love this specific part, the essay, because a lot of you guys share with me really amazing plan for Indonesia when you're back. You have to know the strength and fit of the universities. This is something that I'm going to talk on my next few slides. But then again, you have to demonstrate clear career goals. You already know that by now. And again, you don't have to compare your essay with others because there will be pressure. That's something that I see a lot from people. Stay original and just come to us. So, questions to ask yourself when writing the statement of purpose. So, if you're still stuck You're not really, you're still unsure about, I'm still confused about what should I write. Ask these questions, right? Why do you want to do what you want to do? So if you're like, I actually don't really know what I want to do, that's gonna be a problem. That's gonna be a problem. Maybe take some time first and then really rethink, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Right? What is the turning point or the aha moment that gets you to think, oh my goodness, I need to study masters and I need to do it in the US. When was that? When did that happen? Right? Think about that. What is, if any, the issue that you would like to address? And if you have any relevant research or internship, so think about the thesis that I mentioned about, right? Because in Indonesia, when you want, and when you do S1, when you do bachelor's, you graduate with a thesis. Well, not so much in the US, but in Indonesia, that is the case. So if you want to continue doing that research, then you already have a story to begin. How did the program and the university that you choose over another helped you address the issue? Again, this is something that you're not going to put this in the introduction paragraph. This is on the body paragraph, which I'm going to talk about on my next few slides. And then you also need to think about why should they select you over another candidate. By now, you already know that the admissions committee might skip your essay if they found that, oh my God, this story is the 50th time that I read from the other applicants. And then they just don't have the time to do that and they're just going to skip it. So if you write a one-of-a-kind story, that's kind of like already put you to be, one-of-a-kind applicants as well. So you need to think about that. Why should I select you over another candidate? And again, what goals and purpose would you like to achieve after the program? So by now, you start to realize, right? Because, just hearing myself talking, I actually, also put myself in your shoes as if I'm about to write an essay. I mean, when I, by now you start to realize that this essay is everything about everything that hasn't happened, everything that you want to do in the future, and not so much about what you want to do in the past, right? So now, writing the body and conclusion paragraph. Did you see how long I spent to just talk about the introduction paragraph? But the reasons I did that is because I really want you to really pay attention in the introduction paragraph because it's really that important, right? Once you have a really great introduction paragraph, it's going to be very easy to continue the rest, except for the one paragraph when you're going to talk about the university. All right. So before I move on, I also want to share, if you think that maybe tomorrow, well, not tomorrow because I'm not available for advising, Saturday, or maybe, I don't know, like next week, next month, or whenever that is, if you think that you're going to have a session with me or with Santika, I just want to give you a heads up that you don't have to write the whole essay and give it to me already. It's okay if you just want to give me the introduction paragraph, right? Because oftentimes I really hate it when I have to give a big X to the whole essay that you spent so much in writing it, but then I said, I'm sorry, but this is not what the US university is really looking for. I hate that, and I don't want you to be one of those people, right? And I really hope, and I really thank you guys so much for watching this session, because now you know what to write, right? But then again, you don't have to write the whole essay first. If you want to just write the introduction paragraph first, and then you share it with me, and then we start from there. That's very ideal, right? Okay, so now the body and conclusion paragraph. So remember when I mentioned that in the introduction paragraph is basically about, you're giving a teaser, you're giving a glimpse about Indonesia. The reasons why we were doing that is to grab the attention of the reader so that they can keep reading. And so the body paragraph, so once you have the teaser, the body paragraph, the first next paragraphs will be about going into detail of the teaser that you left in the introduction paragraph. So that's fairly easy, right? If you already know what you're talking about, that's very easy. You just need to continue and continue and providing data and all that. And then once you're done with that, you kind of like show them the problem in the second, third paragraph. You show them the gap. So this is what really happens in Indonesia. The government has been doing a tremendous job, but we are still missing this and that, right? If that is the case. And so after that, you're going to talk about the next paragraph, which is, so this is why I need to study master's degree, specifically this program and in your campus. And so then now you're going to have a whole new paragraph specifically talking about the university. And this is very important because you have to be able to connect the problem that you have on the second and third paragraph to what the university actually has. And here's the thing, this is what different about the US, right? I don't see them as being commercial, meaning that they don't accept you just because they know they know that you can pay they know that you can pay your study, and so they just want your money. I see that a lot in other countries, and I'm not saying that there is zero universities in the US or like that, but oftentimes it's not the case in the US. So if when they read your essay, right? So they read the problem, and then when they got to the paragraph when you're talking about the university, and then they feel like, wait, hold on. I don't think you're actually applying to the right program. And if they think that way, unfortunately, they can reject your application because they don't want you to come to their campus with false hope, right? So that's why that specific paragraph is really important, because at the same time, they want you to convince them that you've done a really deep research connecting the problem that you have in Indonesia to how you believe that this university will help. Okay? So how you can do that? So oftentimes people, when they talk about the university, right? A lot of us mention about this university. I'm applying to this university because this university is number one in the US. X, no, that's not what they're looking for, right? What they're really looking for is, again, how do you know that this program is actually for you, right? So how you can do that? You can mention specific courses. Pick one or two courses that is very on point. I mean, what I mean by on point is one or two courses that you believe that will play a huge role in fixing whatever problem that you want to do in Indonesia when you're back. Or you can also mention relevant professors as well, right? And a lot of people quite unsure in this part because really, like, is it really okay to mention professors? And I said, yeah, because we never know. Usually the admissions committee, the way they do it, it's a rolling they're rolling it. So I mean, I don't know how to say it, but like, maybe for this specific academic year, it's going to be reviewed by this professor and that professor, and then for the next following year, it's going to be that professor and that professor. And we never know that maybe when you mention specific professor, that professor is actually reviewing your application, and then they love that. If they read that, you read their research, you read their works, they will appreciate it so much, right? And again, I actually see a lot of my advisees who found out that a lot of professors in the US had been doing or have been doing research in Indonesia. If that is the case, that's even better, right? So I have like a number of advisees whom I told them to, do more research about that professor, and then they come back and then, oh my god, guess what? Like when I look up for the professors for this program, I found out that they've actually doing a research with a specific topic in Indonesia. There you go. We want to mention that. We want to mention that in the essay. Okay. You want to be very well acquainted with the program at schools being considered. So you need to really do a lot of reading about that specific university, that specific department. So you want to read a lot about their department website, right? So it's not just about like mentioning about their ranking, because for them it's like, yeah, we know we're the best in the US. You don't have to mention us again. But if you mention about, I need to study in your campus because you have one of a kind or state of the art technology that no other campus has, and then for them it would be like, oh wow, you did your research. Or maybe you mention specific professor that maybe that specific reader didn't know that that professor actually did a research in Indonesia, and then they read it, and then for them it would be like, oh my goodness, so this person actually did their research. That's the thing that to have we want to have in that specific paragraph, right? Know the strength and fit of the institution. Again, I keep mentioning demonstrate clear career goals, something that you want to do in the future. What is it for you, and what is it for Indonesia? It's all about like, are like how are you going to help this specific issue? Um, what attracts you to the program? It can be the professor, maybe it can be the courses, it can be the curriculum, it can be, I don't know, it can be maybe they have, the only lab that no other universities have or something like that. So you need to find that out. Conclusion can be quite tricky because it's hard. It's kind of like you know mentioning again what you've kind of like wrap things up, but not repeating what you've said. But the easiest way to another way to write in the conclusion is to simply tell them, so what's next, right? We have this nice timeline. When you're talking about, a glimpse of Indonesia, what is missing in this specific topic, and how you believe that you're going to fix that, and how that university will help. That's a really nice timeline, right? And then, so what's next? Next meaning, what are you going to do after you graduate? So you can be very ambitious, and sometimes people haven't thought about that far, and that's totally okay. A lot of my advice is really afraid when I mention this. Be ambitious, because, but Fina, like, yeah, I would love to work with the government, but I haven't reached out to any government officials yet. And I said, that's okay. That's okay. Just be ambitious. Just as long as you have that plan, doesn't mean that doesn't mean that you need to already have that going on, right? So yeah, be ambitious. Use what has already been stated pretty much on your previous paragraphs, but we don't really want to repeat exactly. Okay. What makes your statement of purpose great? Of course, that has to be clear. By now, it's basically, now I'm starting to kind of like wrapping things up. It has to be clear. We don't want to assume that your reader understands everything. It has to be concise. You want to use words economically, especially if the essay requirements is just 500 words. I mean, it's really hard to write in 500 words. Maybe at this point you are happy to have a university or universities that require you to only write 500, because maybe you're thinking, oh great, I don't have to write a lot of things. But then trust me, once you know the kind of story that you want to tell them, you cannot stop, right? So the whole thing of me having this presentation is also to tell you guys that yes, the writing part is hard, but it's actually very fun. And I actually got this a lot from my advisees, that they found out that now that they know what is it exactly that the university is looking for, they can't stop. Like, they keep wanting to, share what is it their plan. So it has to be very well written, for sure. It has to be organized. We want to make sure that you answer all the questions that the university asks, it has to be relevant because we are writing a story, right? It's almost like you're reading a book. It has to be relevant. You don't want to write one paragraph about one thing and then another paragraph you're talking about you've been doing volunteering. Like, what is that? What does that have anything to do with whatever, right? With what is that you want to do? Sets you apart from other applicants. You need to have that in mind by now. It has to it speaks to your audience, which is the admissions committee. Again, you need to know the reader. You need to establish your voice. You need to sound like you know what you're talking about. So you have to be the expert on that and be honest. Just be honest, right? The do's. Give yourself plenty of time to write it. So now maybe you're thinking, okay, Fina, so I want to apply for fall 2021. So if I just start writing now, is it late? Yeah, it's late. But it's still better than nothing, because again, writing an essay can be very challenging unless you are just you happen to be a good writer and happen to be a good English writer. Then that's a different story. But you definitely need to give plenty of time. And the ideal time, if you are applying for fall 2021, you definitely you should have like started as early as this year. But then again, don't worry about it if you haven't done that. Just start writing it now, right? Be sure to answer all questions asked. Again, I have that on my previous slide. Come up with a theme. You know that by now. Begin with an attention grabbing. You know that, right? Articulate a clear, realistic purpose of your goal, of your career goal, something that I keep mentioning over and over again tonight. Use concrete examples of life, academic, and professional experiences to distinguish yourself, if that is the case. Ignore negatives. This is new, but what do I mean by that? So, oftentimes I would read something about the government has been failed in doing this, and then the way the students write it is too negative towards the government. But then and then the advisor would be like, but it is a bad thing. I know, I understand, but we want to make it. I mean, there are ways to not sound like you're attacking the government. And that's something that we can also discuss when we're doing a one-on-one session. Focus on your strength. Form conclusions with kind of like ending the story by, after this degree, with this degree, this is the first few steps that I'm gonna do, right? So that's gonna be your conclusion. Don't. Grammatical errors. I haven't really talked about grammatical errors. This is the first one that I mentioned it, I believe, tonight, right? Grammatical errors. The thing is, when you're having a session with me and with Santika, we do not check on the grammar. So you need to have an English native speaker or English native speakers to check on the grammar. And it's very important. I can't stress this enough. It's very important. It will defeat the whole thing if you understand how to write a good essay, but then you have a lot of grammatical errors. It will defeat the whole thing, right? Again, unfortunately, we don't check your grammar. What we're doing is like what you've been hearing from me for the past, I don't know, 1 hour or so, is that we're working on the structure because it's equally important. I want to say that grammars and the structure is, I can't say that, grammar is more important or structure is more important. Those two are going together. You can't have like a good structure but really bad grammars, but then at the same time, and vice versa, right? You might have a perfect English on your writing, but then the structure is nothing. You start the essay by, "Hi, my name is Fina. I graduated from university da 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 da." Like the structure, it's no, it's also something that they're not gonna read, right? So continue the don'ts, not just grammatical errors, unfortunately. But again, this is something that you already know. The don'ts is we don't write an autobiography. We don't really write the contractions like they've, could, and should have. We want to spell that out. They have, could not, should have. We don't want to listing experience and achievements. Sometimes they might ask that, but it's not like you just like listing them just like what you did on your resume, but then you kind of like want to explain it. So think of every time you make a statement, you want to elaborate. So you can't just say, I did this in my previous job, and then that's it. But you want to elaborate. How did you do that, and why did you do that? Right? You don't want to sound cliches, or we don't want to sound naive. You don't want to just say that I have always wanted to be the person to fix the economy of Indonesia, so that Indonesia can be a better country. But we want to go deeper than that, right? Um, References or any experience before college. This is also something similar to resume or CV. If you were here last week, was it last week? I think it was last week. We don't mention anything before college, so you just start with college, right? We don't want to talk about some controversial topics unless that's what you want to talk about. And this is what I also love about being an advisor, reading a lot of essays, because I actually get to read a lot of controversial topic. So, for example, like human rights and gender inequality and stuff like that. So yeah, right. So that's a don't. And writer's block. We're close to the end of my presentation here, and let's talk a little bit about writer's block. If you know what writer's block is, it's when, if you're a writer, right? Sometimes they just they would sit down and then, okay, I'm gonna write this one chapter or what have you, and they just, their mind is just blocked, like they don't know what to write. And sometimes that happens to you as well, especially if you have so many times to work on the essay. That's totally normal to have a writer's block. But if your deadline is next month or in the next 2 months, forget about writer's block. You don't get to have writer's block. You have to keep writing because of the deadline, right? But if you have writer's block, don't worry. I have some tips. Some people found it really hard in writing the statement of purpose because, well, let's be real. We are Indonesians. We don't use English as a first language. English is not our first language. Bahasa is. So in that case, why don't you write in Bahasa first? However, I remember when I first put this bullet points up, I think last year or something, I started to see a lot of advices coming in for an essay review, and then they give me an essay, the draft in Bahasa. And I said, no, that's not what I mean. You can start with Bahasa, but then whenever you are ready to share it with me, please have it in English. It's just that because I already read so many essays, my mind already got used to and working and reading the whole thing in English. And it's just very challenging for me to understand everything in Bahasa with all that formal words and stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, you can start actually in Bahasa. And also, some people found it really hard to creating like a really nice essay because the words limit, because they know that the university also already asked in the beginning that no more than 250 words, no more than 500 words, and then so they are panicking and the essays, they just not really answer the question. So in this case, forget about the words limit. If that's the case, just write as long as you want. I have a number of advices coming in, and then they, here's my essay, and then they and it's like 4 or 5 pages, right? And that's totally fine. And we work together on how to make it concise. Ask others who know you well to help you brainstorm. If you feel that will be helpful. And then once you have the draft, ask strangers for an honest opinion. But then here's the thing about our culture here in Indonesia, right? So maybe you already write this draft, you spent like countless nights, and you believe that this is one of your best work. And so you ask your best friend for an opinion, and because that best friend, and because that's part of our culture, probably that best friend, when they read it, to be completely honest, maybe they were thinking, I don't understand anything that my friend is saying, or maybe this is actually not really that interesting, because they are best friends, they don't want to be very honest about it, right? So in that case, well, let's do the opposite. Let's just ask strangers like myself. I'll be your stranger. I don't know you, right? Although at the end, I will try my best to get to know you better so that we can work on the essay together really well. But I'll be your strangers. I'll give you a very honest opinion, right? And of course, This is something that I started doing last year when we were still in America, but I don't see why not now that we're going digital. When we're doing a session specifically on essay, usually I ask them to, if you have your phone ready, pull up the voice recording app and then record the whole session with me, because I'm going to ask you a lot of questions and you're going to answer it. But it doesn't have to be like when we're doing a session per se. When you're at home, if you're the self-talk type of persons like I do, feel free to record yourself. Or if not, if you've never done that and you found it really weird to record yourself, whenever you have the thought coming up, have your phone ready, or if you have the type, if you have like some notebook or something like that, write it down. Write it down. I think that would be really helpful. Okay, so in summary, start early, at least 2 years before the program starts. Don't worry, I'm not saying 2 years before the deadline. I said 2 years before the program starts, meaning that if you want to start your study in fall 2021, you actually should have started in September last year, or ideally this January. But don't worry if you haven't done that. Now is also a perfect timing. You might not have a lot of times to work on it depending on like your writing style, but you definitely want to start now. Do not write about your biography out of your CV. That is very important. I don't want to see that when we're reviewing the essay, right? But you talk about your vision, your professional goals, and what would you like to achieve in the next 3-5 years after the program. Ask the big questions. Who are you trying to help? What are you trying to help? What are you trying to do? And again, this might be tricky when it comes to MBA. I mentioned MBA again now, but I'm not focusing on MBA essay tonight. I'm focusing on just like the common type of essay, right? So other programs, whatever that is, even if you want to be a data scientist, there is a help in there. You're doing something. You're helping something, right? So how small it is, you're doing something. Maybe even MBA, but it's tricky. We can talk about that maybe during the Q&A. What is my goal in the future that requires me? You need to think about this. What is my goal in the future? What is it that I want to do so badly that I require myself to study all the way in the US, right? And then, of course, last but not least, write, rewrite, and rewrite your essay. You will understand later when we start doing the one-on-one session that you found it frustrating even because I keep telling you that nope, not close. Nope, we still need revision. We need revision. In fact, I'm working right now with, I want to say about 10, 15 people already, advisee who want to study, who wants to apply for fall 2021. Still in a very early stage because this is their first time writing it, and then we're going slowly. And yeah, I mean, I got an advisee who we've already done this session for like 5-6 times, and we're still nowhere, and that's okay. That's okay. The more revision, the better, because I'm going to push you a lot. Because if you come back to the first few slides that I mentioned, is because we want to make the readers keep reading, and we want to have this essay only you as the writer, nobody else, not even one person, right? So I believe this is my last slide. So again, EducationUSA America Advisors, we provide this service. In fact, I want to say this is the most popular service that people use when it comes to EducationUSA America, to the point where people kind of like feel bad because they would come to America and see me nonstop, working with students, didn't get break. But it's my favorite. Actually, this is part of my favorite task to do. I love reading essay. So yeah, no, just keep it coming. Keep it coming, right? Again, we assist you on the structure of the essay, not the grammar. We do not review scholarship essays. We are not reading your LPDP essay. We're not reading your whatever scholarship that you're applying, or essay still in Bahasa Indonesia. My schedule for an essay review is any day between 5 until 9. But I would definitely give an hour slot. So if you come in at 9, of course, I'm not gonna read your essay because my shift is ended. But you want to come at the latest at probably at 8, because when we're doing essay review, it's a 30 minutes to 1 hour session. It is that long. It is that long. Feel free to send the draft to my email f.alatas@educationusa.org, or maybe just let's talk first and then we send it later. We don't do offline review, so we don't do you send me your draft and then you're expecting me to write you back with the comments. I can do that, but I don't want to. I want you to be present as well. I want you to be like, I want you to be present and answering some of my questions, like why are you writing this way and not writing that way, right? So we don't do offline review. Only on some cases meaning that if I have an advisee who I believe that we are almost done in terms of like the structure, and then I don't feel like we have to do a lot of back and forth in terms of like the session in person, where I just need to kind of like making like small comments, that is fine to make it offline. All right, I guess that's it. So now it's at 8. I'm gonna check with Santika. How are we doing? I'm going to stop sharing this. If we have Santika.
Hi, Tina. Right. Thank you so much for the very complete presentation.
Hear Santika, or is it just me?
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, I can't read it, but okay. Now how do we do this?
Hi, Fina.
Okay, I'm just going to go ahead. All right, so we actually have a number of questions here. We got Sahril Kasim from Zoom asking, regarding the SOP, if we cite data or statistic, is it necessary to put the source in the footnote just like other academic essay? Good question. I love this. The answer is no. You just simply need to say according to blah, 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 but you don't have to cite it. So like what I showed you earlier, some of the students talk about like PwC report or the World Bank report, what have you. So no, you don't have to cite it. What if, unfortunately, the professor that we've mentioned in the essay will not be available by the time we enroll? Will it affect the admissions team decision to admit us? Well, not really, but the way I look at it, it kind of like defeat the whole thing, because the reasons we mentioned that professor is because oftentimes, like when you mention a specific professor, right, and then the admissions committee read that, and then they found it really interesting that you mentioned that professor, maybe because that professor has like a research in Indonesia or something like that. What happens is that person who reads it can call up the professor and then, hey, look, I'm reading this one essay and I think you want to read it. And so that's kind of like the whole point on why we're mentioning the professor. So if the professor is no longer there, it's kind of like the whole thing, but it doesn't mean that you can't do that. So it's totally okay. Let's see here. We got Betari Bunga. If a professor in that particular university inspired me to pursue that degree, should I email him or her first before mentioning their name in my essay? Interesting. You don't have to, I feel like. It's not like you need to have a permission to mention them. Because when we mention the professor, it's basically, you, what is the word I'm looking for? You appreciate their work. So I don't think it's something that you need to have a permission on. And so let's see here what we got. Another Betari Bunga. should we explain a very Indonesian term in the essay? For example, explaining what posyandu is will take so many words. Oh, I love this. But otherwise, no one will understand what posyandu is. Yes, this is tricky, right? Let me see. It's tricky because in the past I would have someone who would want to talk about gotong royong, right? Or I have an advisee who wants to talk about kampung, but then when you mention kampung, right? Maybe the first word that you have in mind is village, but then in the U.S., village doesn't mean kampung to us here in Indonesia. But this one particular advisee, do a really amazing thing, which I really appreciated, where she understand that I think the Americans will have a hard time understanding what kampung is, because I think she said she doesn't want to use the word slum because it's too like so negative tone. But she uses kind of like an example of a kampung in Brazil, like which is favela, and I think that's just like genius because who doesn't know favela, right? So I think, and then when people think about favela, and then so that's Indonesia has like a similar thing, which is what they call a kampung. So Posyandu, I actually have one advisee of mine who is using this term, and then we kind of like have a hard time finding the right explanation to make the reader understand what Posyandu is in the US. Or I have another one, warung. She wants to talk about warung, but then in the US, of course, there is no warung. But then when she said warung, the one thing that I on top of my head is those warung in Manhattan, the pinggir, on the side of the road, in the roads where you can get like, I don't know, candies and newspaper and stuff. That's the equivalent of warung to here. So yeah, so definitely, if you want to use it, you definitely need to explain it. All right. Again, in providing a shocking data, should we cite a source? Oh, this is similar to previous question, but you don't have to make like a footnote. But yeah, according to PwC report, according to the World Bank, according to Indonesia statistic, yeah, you need that, right? Let's see here. Diana Latvenia, also from Zoom. Is there any particular differences between SOP for MBA program and other master's program? There you go. This is something that I'm not going to talk about MBA essay unless someone is asking, because MBA essay is very tricky. Oftentimes, right? Why are you applying for an MBA? And then a lot of us think, I want to level up my career. I want to join, those big consulting firms. And I'm not used to reading essays where you are not helping, if you know what I mean. And this is kind of like the case with the MBA program, with the MBA essay, because you are not necessarily need to mention that you are helping this tiny little community or what have you, right? So I actually have a hard time reading MBA essay because I don't know how you can make your essay different than other people, right? I think that's that. And also because with MBA programs, they are not really asking statement of purpose. They're not really expecting you writing like a story, something that I have shared with you tonight, but it's so much about business like, the way I look at it. It's more like, the first year after you graduate from MBA, what are you going to do? Working in a big consulting firm, or are you going to, change your career? So it's all about yourself in a way. It's not about, I'm going to help this part of, community or something like that. So yeah, I would say there is a difference in MBA, and that makes applying to MBA program is very, very tricky because almost everybody wants to apply for MBA with pretty much the same goal. So to the point where I can't really say that I can't really see the differences that this one MBA essay compared to the other MBAs is different. But if you actually have some kind of like a plan, which is it's not always about you level up your career, it's not always about you want to work in a big consulting firms, but you actually want to help something, you want to, I don't know, you want to start an entrepreneurship, social, you want to do social entrepreneurship, but then you want to do it in the MBA program, then yeah, pretty much will be the same with the signal purpose. Okay. I want to check just real quick with Santika. If
can you hear
me? All right, okay. Santika is still, we can still hear Santika's voice, but I mean, at least I can hear it. Hopefully, anyone else can hear it. Just we technical glitch here, but let's see here. I'm just gonna continue. We have Rahmania Agustin. Regarding mentioning professor, is it okay to just mention their name without contacting them first? I'm kind of unsure to cite a distinguished academic without them knowing me first. So this is similar to Betari, I think. If you need to, ask for permission, no, you don't have to. I don't see why you need to have a permission. Because again, you mentioning the professor is more like you appreciating their work. And that you believe that by being their students, it will help you. So you don't have to do that. We got another one here from Perti Rosanda. For example, I have received an offer letter from a professor in a university in the US. Then I want to apply for Fulbright scholarship. Should I mention the offer from the professor in my application document as a preferred Fulbright? So this is a question about Fulbright, right? No, I mean, this is my understanding, when you're writing an essay, when you're writing an essay for Fulbright, you don't mention any specific university, no mentioning any specific or professor, because it's different when it comes to Fulbright application, because you're applying for the Fulbright first, and then they're going to give you a list of university. Let's see here. If you can have if you can mark the question here, which one should I ask, Santika? That would be really great. But we got, let's see here. Is the question on the essay always same in any scholarship? So this is from Zahlul Jihad from Zoom. Is the question on the essay always always the same in any scholarship or something else? From one university to another university, yes. Oftentimes it will practically the same. They might not use the same wording, and then in one time, in one university, probably in one reading, like when you read it the first time, you probably kind of like, okay, I got it, and then you read another type of question from another university, and then you feel like, oh yeah, no, those two are different. But then actually, when you read it again and again and again, it's actually the same, right? But with scholarship, it depends, right? We're talking about the university here. All right. Okay, so I'm going to give you back to Santika. I think the problem is on my side. I can't hear Santika, but I'm going to give it to Santika to maybe if you want to take some, if you want to answer some. All right, Santika?
All right. Thank you so much, Fina. And I will continue on some questions that I got. So there's this question in Instagram from Jessie Tiara is what does the essay usually contain? So basically, I'm assuming if you watch this from the middle or like from the end, you won't get the full information on what Fina have presented. So those are what your essay should contain. It should have a very good introduction paragraph. It should have a good hook so that it allows the admission committee to read the whole essay, not just partial essay. and it has to contain like show that you are an expert and that you do your research on the university and everything. So that's that. And I can, I don't want to recite the whole presentation, so I would suggest you to kind of like rewatch it in our YouTube. If you cannot find our YouTube, you can type in YouTube. Our YouTube is at America with double A at the end. So you can try to find our session tonight and rewatch it as much as you want. Okay, moving on to the next question. It's from Instagram as well, from Tristat underscore. It's mentioning the professor necessary. What if we are applying to numerous universities? So what we usually suggest advisee to to plan their strategy to apply to U.S. universities is don't apply to just one U.S. university, because then the more university that you apply, the more chance that you will get accepted to at least one of the universities. So this is a very good question. If you want to mention it, it's not a must that you have to mention the professor, but if you could, that would be better. But you don't have to force it in a way like you don't really find a lot of details on what kind of research the professor did, and maybe it does not align that much to you. But you can go to the course list and see if the focus is what you want to focus as well, if that helps. So it can kind of replace you talking about the professor. You can talk about the course. You can talk about maybe they have this community or club in the university that you really want to uh, attend, and also give some contributions to. And what if you're applying to numerous university? That's great, but make sure that you don't make an error where you're saying university A, then you send this essay to university B instead. So that's very fatal. Itu fatal sekali. So please don't do that, and double check or triple or check as many times as you want before you actually send your essay to avoid that kind of error. And another tip is kind of like a typo on the university name. That's very important. I've seen typo on universities such as Stanford, and yeah, totally. You don't want to you don't want to mistype the Stanford University in the essay that you want to send to them, right? That's just kind of like common problem, but it's totally kind of like turn off the admission committee. Okay, move on to the next question. We have more questions coming in as time goes by. This one is from Esther Simamora in Zoom. The statement of objective needs to be as structured as, let's say, IELTS essay, introduction to mention general statement for the whole essay, main idea, extra. I think essays generally needs to have a structure. So it should be like introduction and then body paragraph and then your conclusion. But the thing that's tricky for US university application essay, like statement of purpose or personal essay, is your content. Like if your content is not good, no matter how good your structure is, I don't think that will help. So your content and how fluid it is. So when I'm reading the first paragraph and then I go to the second paragraph, does it like connect, or it's like something is missing, like a missing story or a missing information that you should have included. So I think that's very important. And for structure, yes, it should have introduction, body paragraph, and conclusion. Next question is again from Betari. How to write a conclusion without repeating the previous statement in the opening or the body of the essay. So I know this question is for Fina, but for my point of view, I usually suggest the advisee to kind of like make an outline first. So like in introduction, what kind of hook or topic you want to put in. So just kind of like one or two bullet points per paragraph, and then you kind of like develop it. And that way, I think you can ensure that you don't repeat the same thing that you have already mentioned before in the next paragraph. I hope that helps. And next, I think, Fina, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Just checking.
I'm sorry
Yeah,
about that. So
that's fine.
it's really nice it's really nice to finally be able to hear someone else's voice because I've been talking for quite a long time. But no, thank you so much, Santika, for covering. Yeah, no, keep doing. If there's any other, or you want me to take over?
Yeah, you can take over. But what do you think? I think I was going to ask you about something, but I kind of like forgot about it because of the issue here. So what would you say for the batteries question just now when you
how to write a conclusion? I know it's really actually writing a conclusion is, I don't even know exactly how to do it because it's what I know is just like about you pretty much wrapping up everything without you repeating what you just said. But and because I don't exactly know how to do that, sometimes I told my advisee to just simply talking about their straight plans after they are done with the study. What is it that the next few plans that you're going to do? So, for example, after you're done with the after I'm done with the program, I'm going, I'll come back to Indonesia and start, I don't know what is it, all the plans that you're planning to do. But yeah, no, you don't really have to worry too much about this. I mean, once you're get things going in terms of your introduction paragraph, your body paragraphs, it's it will be we can figure things out in terms of the conclusion.
All right, thank you so much, Fina. I think we can go on to the next question. I know you will love this one. This one is from Jaden Phillip. What's the most critical part of the statement of purpose that most US universities are always looking for in applicants?
Okay, and Jaden actually asked also a question in the Zoom chat, which I just answered, asking about does college require a statement of purpose, and if you're applying for a community college is if you want to study bachelor's degree in the US. The answer is no. You don't need to write an essay, but you actually also have a good question here. The most critical part of the statement of purpose that most US universities are always looking for in applicants. This is actually really tricky. The most critical part, I want to say, just as long as you stick with one topic and one theme, and then you have that on your overall essay. And if that topic, if that theme is something that is interesting, which always the case when I read essays here in Indonesia, I think that's something that that they're looking for. Again, they're not looking for something that they can find it from other documents like your name, you graduated cum laude and stuff like that. You don't have to mention that in the essay, but they want to hear a story about your country, a story about that Indonesia still need to fix in this part or that part, and I want to have the government, I want to work alongside the government, and that's why I want to study in your campus. That kind of story, that kind of story that they're looking for.
I think we have very limited time by now.
Yeah.
So yeah, we only have 2 questions left, and I think we can make it on time.
All right. So which other question that we can?
Okay, next question is from Gita in Instagram. How to develop the English skill on writing style to be more fluent? So it's kind of like how to write in English fluently.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that because here's the thing with EducationUSA, right? EducationUSA is not a place where you're learning about English if you're still in a very basic level. I mean, we did have like TOEFL. We did have workshops like TOEFL and IELTS and GRE and all that. But it's not about you learning English. You already know English, right? But you're going a step further to take the test. So it really depends on where you are in your English. If you are still on a very basic level, I would say take some time to actually take some English classes. how to develop the English skills. Again, that's something that I don't know how to do that, to be completely honest with you, because I'm not an English teacher. But for me, if you have like a lot of times to work on it, if you like to read the opinion section of an article, like the New York Times or even like the Jakarta Post, the opinion section is more like telling a story, not so much like an academic, like as if you're reading a newspaper. So if you want to start practicing that, I would say probably that will help.
All right, thank you so much, Fina. And yeah,
one last question.
I think that's very tricky, because then English is kind of different for every people on the level of how they learn and everything. So you have to figure it out on your own and learn. Next question is very short. So this is from Esther in Zoom. For any important notes, can we use bold or italic or underline? I'm assuming this is in your essay. I never seen them before, and I wouldn't recommend that, because I think that will be kind of like distracting. What do you say, Fina?
Unless the word is very foreign to them. So for example, like I mentioned earlier, if you want to kind of like talk about specific Indonesian word like posyandu, or terms like gotong royong, warung, kampung, you want to kind of like, and it's actually really good if you want to use that, because it's very Indonesia, right? So yeah, if you are using that word, you definitely want to italic that word. You don't have to underline or bold it. Italic is fine, with probably with a quotation. And I think we can have this one last question, probably, Santika, from Faheza Aryo Damara in Zoom, and then we can close the session tonight. Yep. So any advice on how to get an engaging hook for personal statement opening? Good question. The one of the ways to, or many ways to do this, is you need to, you really need to know first what is it that you want to talk about. That's for sure, because for a certain topic, for whatever topic that you come up with, we are going to have that in the introduction paragraph. And then how to engage them, or to have like a hook, is I always mention about like talking about like Indonesia in a way, like give the reader an information about like the Indonesia situation. You can and a lot of things that you can do this. Maybe you want to talk about the fact that we are the fourth most populous country, just behind the US. That way, because not a lot of people know. Trust me, people know that China, India, the US, but they don't know that the fourth populace is actually Indonesia. So we want to mention them that. And then the fact that probably, it shows them that we actually have a lot of similarity between Indonesia and the US. There's a lot of other things that you can kind of like attract them to keep reading, but at the same time still make a lot of sense to your overall essay. So you're not just like mentioning that Indonesia is the fourth most populous countries in the world for nothing. You want to mention that with a reason, right? Again, that's pretty much probably that's something that we have to kind of like have a discussion first. Or maybe you want to discuss with yourself first and come up with like bullet points, brainstorming. But sometimes people found it really helpful when they brainstorm it together with us, with Santika or with me. Which I'm telling you guys, do it very early, because oftentimes when you come to us and then your deadline is within a month or within 2 months, and then once we are done with the structure, don't forget that you have to have someone to check on your grammar, and then you found out that you don't have time anymore, and then people think that, oh, you know what, hopefully that the university will give me a pass. I don't have time to get someone to check my grammar, but Fina said that the structure is already good. Trust me, I see a lot of my advisees end up getting rejected because of, I'm not saying that I know that the reason is because of the essay, but it will just defeat the whole thing if you have like a nice essay, but then poor grammar. But so yeah, I urge everyone who was watching us tonight to bother Santika or bother me with a session on essay. Again, that's something that I really love to do. And yeah, I think that's pretty much everything that I want to share tonight. It's been a long night, but I really, really hope that you learn a lot. Please, I always love to hear feedback from you guys. So if you have any feedback from me, if you have any feedback from the team about like the session tonight, if you feel like you've learned a lot and you want this session again, maybe let me know. Shoot us an email, and also I urge everyone to have a session with Santika and myself. So, all right. With that, I want to say again, thank you guys so much. For those of you who are also watching us from other platform, let's continue this session via Zoom one-on-one. I think that will be really fun to read more essays from you guys. All right, and then I will give it back to our e-guide.
All right. Thank you, Kafina. Thank you for the great session, and also Kasantika for helping us to answering all of the questions for our participants. So, guys, earlier in the event, we asked you guys which late night talk show host addressed Harvard's class of 2020 during the graduation ceremony. A. Jimmy Fallon, B. Stephen Colbert, C. Trevor Noah, or D. Conan O'Brien. And the correct answer is D. Conan O'Brien. Congratulations to Lelius Vita from Facebook for answering correctly. And thank you to everyone who has participated. Don't forget to tune in next time and get a chance to get a shout out from us. And now you may be wondering, how can you develop an awesome idea for a place like this? Don't worry, you can send your event proposal to us by visiting our website at www.atamerica.or.id. Select create a program and go to collaborate with us. All proposals coming to us will be reviewed and your event might be featured here soon. You can also subscribe to our newsletter for all of our weekly events updates that will be sent straight to your inbox. All right, that was this episode. It has been fun, but unfortunately, we have to say goodbye for now. Don't forget to follow our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at AT America for all of our events updates, fun content, and so much more. Also, don't forget to take us up. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So, thanks for joining, and see you next time on At America TV. Bye.